Hey SmartPak fans, I'm SmartPaker Sarah, and she's Dr. Lydia Gray, Staff Veterinarian and Medical Director here at SmartPak, and we are once again here to answer the top 5 questions asked and voted on by fans like you.
Did a good job.
So yeah, all as usual, did a great job, and we're excited to get to it. We've been doing this for a while, so if you have a question, you don't necessarily have to wait till next month to get your answer.
Right.
We have a whole playlist where we break out each individual question, and we title the episodes really clearly so you can see the question right there. So you should subscribe to our channel and make sure you're always getting the latest updates and the latest questions. And then you can check that out on our YouTube playlist or in our horse health library where it's broken out by horse health topic.
Okay.
And you can also find supporting content in blogs or written articles, a lot of times authored by you.
No, she writes, she speaks.
Coincidence. She's so wise. All right, without further ado, let's get into our first question. This one's asked by Carlene on the Ask the Vet form, which you guys can find at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. And the question is, my kids love bathing their horse, a 15-year-old paint gelding. Gotta get those white spots. Gotta get that elbow grease. When the weather warms up, I wanted to ask if there's any pro or con to a horse getting bathed 3 to 4 times a week. And if there's a good time the kids should bathe him, i.e. after a ride, after eating, before eating.
Oh,
what do you think?
Well, what a great hobby. Her kids could be doing something way worse. So
true.
Point them at the horse, that's great. I'm curious, what about bathing the horse they like? Because for a lot of people, it's a chore.
It does. So for me, the part where it runs down your arm and into your armpit.
I love that part. That is my favorite part.
Worst.
Yeah.
Cringeworthy.
3 to 4 times a week, to me, sounds a little excessive. I mean, there's not a rule about this, and every discipline in horses, of course, does it differently. But I guess I've heard through the grapevine maybe once a week is sort of a standard. But I mean, that's not a hard and fast set rule by any means. The reason, though, we don't bathe more often than that is because it does a couple things that are on your con list. It strips the horse of their natural oils. They need those for protection. It can dry the skin and also dry the hair, and so a dry, flaky coat can make them more prone to a skin infection. There's also normal, don't get creeped out by this, but there's normal bacteria that live on your skin all the time, but they're good bacteria, just like in your hindgut. And if you use soap on them, then you strip the body of them too. And so again, it sets you up for other bacteria coming in that are not good. Horses, I'm guessing he doesn't because of the care. Horses that have like long fetlock hairs, if those get wet and stay wet and don't have time to dry in between, that can maybe lead to scratches, which is like when the pasterns get chapped and infected. And it can be painful. And then lastly, keep going down, I think of the hooves. We always talk about not doing a wet, dry cycle with the hooves. And so even if I have a horse that needs a bath, like after a ride, I don't know a lot of horses that need baths after eating, unless this horse, like, you know, Cookie Monster eating style. But after riding, if they've sweated on the girth or under the bridle, I might take just a little bucket of warm water and a sponge and wipe just those areas because I don't want to get the feet wet or I don't want to get the legs wet. So I guess I would try to back off, maybe think of something else the kids can do, like braid the mane, or is somebody currying? Because, you know, currying's great, especially if you use these gloves.
Which are super fun for kids to use.
And they come in different colors,
it's true.
Right? And they have different sizes. So these are like the, you know, man hand size, but there's kid sizes. So they might think these gloves are just fantastic. And then you might be able to back down on the bathing a little bit because 3 to 4 times a week just seems excessive. Tail, you could wash the tail. I know people that wash the tail every day. So that's an idea. And then, you know, I was going to say this, clicker training. Clicker training is so much fun. That's something they could do with the horse. So
that's true.
Maybe steer them in some healthier directions. that don't involve bathing so much, but still involve interaction, good, healthy interaction with the horse, I guess.
And pro tip from my personal past, if your kids practice braiding or banding manes and they get really good at it, they can make a lot of money in high school and college braiding and banding at the horse shows. So that's a good way to spend some time and invest in your future.
Excellent, yes.
Yeah. All right, our second question was submitted by Haley, and it was submitted on YouTube. And Haley is clearly going into Feeding 101 because last month she asked about the do's and don'ts of feeding oats, which almost rhymes, and it kills me that it doesn't. But this month, Haley's wondering, grass hay versus alfalfa hay, pros and cons of each. What is the biggest difference nutritionally?
But you know what's funny about that? Is her name is Haley. She's asking about hay.
Yeah, we see you, Haley.
All right, so that's a great question. The difference between grass hay and alfalfa hay. What comes to what pops into my mind, the first thing I think of is, well, alfalfa hay has more calcium than grass hay. The second thing that pops into my mind is that alfalfa hay has more protein. In general, it is more nutritionally dense than grass hay. It has more energy or calories. It has less, this shocks people, I know, so hang on to your stools or whatever you're sitting on. It has less sugars and starches than grass hay. So if you're looking for something that maybe is better for that horse with a metabolic condition, Cushing's, PSSM, whatever, don't assume that alfalfa hay is bad. It might actually be better. Now, it sounds like a wonder food, right? Except there's some problems. Horses are supposed to get 1 to 2%, preferably 2% of their body weight each day in forage. Well, because alfalfa is so nutritionally dense, they can't really have 2% of alfalfa hay unless you're in heavy, heavy work, you're pregnant or lactating, you're a young growing horse, you're a hard keeper or older, because it's just too rich for the maintenance of the horse doing nothing. That's maybe working 3 days a week, a half hour, or whatever. It's too much hay, and you can't give them as much bulk as they need for the gut fill with alfalfa. The other thing is, and I have a note, this is a report from UC Davis back in 2001. 98% of the horses treated by UC Davis were fed a diet that contained at least 50% alfalfa hay, treated for enterolis.
Oh.
There is a link, not sure what, between enterolis and excessive, more than 50% of the diet alfalfa hay.
And for those of us not so familiar with the digestive tract, what is an enterolis?
Well, I'm going to use the sponge as an example.
Oh.
Imagine a stone in your horse's colon that is made of minerals, primarily magnesium, maybe some calcium, some protein. It necessarily doesn't do harm, but it can block the tract. It can be painful. So there is an association between overfeeding of alfalfa hay and enterolis. We see a lot of it in California and for some reason Arabian horses. So that's a problem. On the plus side, because I don't want to make alfalfa seem like a bad thing, is, and again, we don't know exactly why, but for horses with gastric ulcers, it is a really good therapeutic nutrition. I don't really know how to say it, but it's not going to treat gastric ulcers. We have medications for that, but a horse that's prone to them might do better getting some alfalfa in his diet. So use it for what it's good for, and then don't use it when it's not appropriate.
And probably don't use it exclusively unless you have one of those rare conditions where you have a horse who needs that much calories.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was exciting. My favorite part was probably that I managed to keep a straight face when you said, hold on to your stools, which I found very exciting. And we don't have to talk about any more than that. Question number 3 is from Amber Nicole B on Instagram. And Amber's wondering, things to take note of when taking a horse off of 8 months stall rest. Oh, bless you, Amber. I'm so sorry. Thank goodness you're near the end. He had a leg fracture that is healed well enough to start turnout next month. You've got some stall rest in your past.
That's exciting.
It is exciting.
Me and my horse both.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I have done recently, some research on bone health. And I've got a few things to read that are really interesting. I'm a vet, and I'm sure someone told me this in vet school. I was thinking about horses. So I'm sure I heard this, but rereading this has been so helpful. So after extended periods of stall rest, the calcium requirements go up, even if horses are just returned to a pasture setting to compensate for bone loss associated with disuse.
Okay.
So that's the stall rest. When a horse goes on stall rest, there's a signal to their body, you're not exercising, the bone can lose its density, its thickness, its hardness. The minerals go away. As soon as the horse ends the stall rest and gets put back into work, the exercise stimulates the cells in the bone to gather more minerals and build more bone. So it's at this time that it's critical she add those minerals, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, collagen. A third of the bone is collagen. And then factors that help bone build the scaffolding and the structure, that's the silicon and the silica and the boron and things like that. So now is when she needs those. And that's why I said a couple products out that are designed just for horses exactly in the time frame that you are. So I think the first thing I think of is when you're adding exercise back slowly with your vet's help is get the nutrition correct. Then there's a book, and it's kind of old. It's 2007, and I have it and I love it and I've used it a lot. It's very specific for what you're coming off of, but it's called Back to Work: How to Rehabilitate or Recondition Your Horse. It's by Lucinda Dyer. It tells you exactly what to do for bone injuries, for soft tissue injuries, for whatever it is, how to gradually, step by step, week by week, bring them back into condition. Because she's got to rehab the bone, the muscles, the tendons and ligaments, the hooves have to be conditioned again. I mean, it was 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, that was a long time. Because one of these studies said after 12 weeks, so that's only 3 months, in Arabians, they decreased their cannon bone mineral content. And to compensate for this mineral loss, when activity resumed, they needed to feed 20% above the recommended amounts of calcium.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you begin to exercise your horse again, you've really got to pump them with the nutrition. You've got to overdo what the NRC says. So get that book by Lucinda Dyer. Then get the Hillary Clayton book, The Conditioning.
I knew it was coming.
Oh,
I knew we weren't going to talk about books and not talk about Hillary Clayton.
She tells you exactly, because you've lost muscle mass and strength, you've lost flexibility in your connective tissue, and you've lost cardiovascular, like aerobic conditioning. And she tells you exactly how to get all that back and the time frames, like which ones come in a month and which ones take 2 months and which ones take 3 months. So you need to do both those things. You need to bring him back safely and then sort of strategically to make sure that he's fit in all his body parts. It's scary, it's exciting. I mean, we wish you the best of luck.
Yes.
But you'll do great. Don't stress out.
So I would throw out there also, given the timing, this is our April video, both of those books are great suggestions for anybody coming out of winter if you haven't been working your horses much, because both have great feedback for reconditioning and bringing your horse back into heavy work. And taking the winter off is a lot like being on a lesser version of stall rest. Your horse's physicality really changes. So great books to check out. Question 4 was submitted by Kim, also on the Ask the Vet forum. And Kim is wondering, if circumstances require you to keep your horse stabled in an individual box stall most of the day, what are the important features to look for in a barn that contribute most to a horse's well-being, e.g. stall with an outside window, being able to see other horses, number of feedings per day, etc.? I will say I love this question because we talk a lot about that being confined to a stall can be stressful for a horse, can be difficult for a horse, and we don't talk about that to make people feel bad, because everybody's unique situation is their own, and finances and geography and all sorts of other factors combine to make where you keep your horse where you keep your horse. And this is exactly the right question, is if this is where I'm keeping my horse, what can I do to optimize for his health?
There's a proven risk factor for colic, and it is stall time. So a couple things you can do for that. One, this is your cue. Keep food in front of the horse all the time. So you can use this slow hay feeder bag. And this is the one with the gator opening, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this
the
thing
gator
is,
mouth. Yeah. So that it actually
stays open. We also have a small whole hay net back here, but if you're at a place that there's not a chance for turnout, I hope the owners of the place will work with her and put the hay into a bag like this or a net so that her horse has food in front of him and can nibble, can graze, can mimic nature as much as possible. Because she asked about how often to feed.
Yes.
And as far as hay, I would keep hay in front of him all the time. So that's feeding, and of course a digestive supplement, because they're just not made to stand in a stall. They're meant to walk around and mosey, as Danvers says, and eat some and run a little bit and that. So we have to worry about their digestive tract. We worry about their hooves. We worry about their respiratory tract. So that's maybe the next focus for me is the barn, the stall, has got to be well ventilated. And that means, and it's going to depend on the season, but it means doors open, windows open, air moving. Hopefully the barn is designed so that air flows and is not designed that, like you wouldn't want a horse in a stall right next to the indoor arena and not outdoor air, because the small particles will just collect in his lungs over time. I also think of bedding. I want my bedding to be, well, deeper in a horse is in a stall, but dust-free. I like, now this is getting really nitty-gritty, but if a horse is going to be in a stall, I like him to be removed when it's cleaned. Again, for the breathing in those small particles. And I'm not a fan of barns that drive tractors in the aisle with horses in stalls. That flywheel ash has been shown to contribute to airway disease. So, and I don't know if this is a stall rest, like he's injured thing, or it's just a circumstances, financial or where I live, but if a horse is in a stall, get him out as much as possible. So it could mean hand walking, it could mean hand grazing. Some of the dressage barns in my area, they don't have good turnout, so they put their horses on the treadmill every day.
Hot walkers.
Yeah, hot walkers. Anything to get them moving. And you might be able to find someone, I have a kid, that she goes out and takes care of my horse when I'm gone. So as many times a day as you can get him out of the stall is great. Maybe the person that you've engaged does a morning sort of exercise and you do an afternoon exercise, and then he gets out of the stall more than once a day, because she's going to run into the same problem that the other person did. The bone and other tissues will have disuse atrophy, you know? So you've got to get them out of that stall. You've got to feed them as nature intended and reduce particles in their airway. Those are the big things I think of.
And I think a lot of people think about lunging as something you do to get the bucks out, but you can do long, slow lunging as a good way to work your horse and mimic that moving around sort of thing. And it's a great activity for somebody who's going to come help you out, just looking to get some horse time. Have them throw them on a lunge line, get a little work. Last but not least, and certainly not least in terms of word count, we have a question from Carrie, who also submitted on the Ask the Vet form. And Carrie's wondering, I'm hoping you can help to shed some light on a problem I've been coping with for about 6 years. You're a patient woman. I have a soon-to-be 27-year-old tricaner. He has a 12x12 stall with shavings, and he's turned out for 8 hours a day. He's an alpha personality in his herd.
Interesting.
Here's the problem. He frequently falls asleep while standing and then nearly falls down. I've known horses like this. It's very disturbing to see this, and he will do it several times in an hour. He does this in his stall and during turnout. He's never done it while under saddle or in cross ties, so I doubt it's narcolepsy. Interesting. He rolls every single day in the pasture, so I know he's not afraid of getting himself back to a standing position. I wonder if this is sleep deprivation. If so, how can I fix it? How can I keep him safe?
That's an interesting question. I've had it before. I think the first important thing is to define clearly narcolepsy from sleep deprivation. Narcolepsy is a chronic, long-term, rare, and most importantly, incurable condition, sleep disorder of the central nervous system. and it's characterized by loss of muscle strength and tone suddenly. It's called, the medical term is cataplexy. And one thing I learned in researching this one, that I always try to think of ways to say things that are memorable and easy, like simple. And so for this one, I have all individuals with narcolepsy have excessive daytime sleepiness.
Okay.
But not all individuals with excessive daytime sleepiness have narcolepsy.
Okay.
Okay. So sleep deprivation, I think a third of humans have this, and horses have it too, because they do require REM sleep. People think horses, oh, they sleep standing up. They doze standing up, but they sleep. The REM sleep that you need to sort of recharge your brain has to be laying down. Now, she said she's seen her horse roll, so he gets down and gets up.
Yep.
There's 4 causes of sleep deprivation in horses, and she described it well. But when he gets drowsy, and then he buckles, a leg buckles, and it partially collapses, and like she said, we've all seen it, and we're like, what's going on? She has ruled out one of the causes of sleep deprivation is pain associated, and that's the horse. It's usually an older horse that can no longer get down and get back up, so they can't sleep anymore. And after about a week of not sleeping, I mean, you begin to see signs. And so when it gets, they sort of get lulled into sleep. But she noted it doesn't happen on the cross ties, or when she's grooming or saddling or something. Or when she's riding. That'd be dangerous. But a lot of horses, when they're on the cross ties and are feeling safe, and their owner is rubbing on them, with these gloves, they get drowsy and they head into the first phase of real sleep, and then they buckle and they wake themselves up. Doesn't sound like that's happening with this guy. So that's the second one, is the monotony associated sleep deprivation. The one that might be, and again, we always say talk to your vet, because you have to make sure this isn't true narcolepsy, or that it's not some other condition.
Right.
But the one that it sounds like to me is the dominance associated sleep deprivation. That's when she said he's an alpha horse. If he's the alpha horse in a herd, he's in charge all the time.
And he's 27.
Yeah.
That's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And he can never completely relax, because who's in charge then? Who's watching out for the whatever, wolves or bears, or I don't know what they have there.
Or like the
alligators.
extra hay.
Or extra hay.
Gotta keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, so in those cases, if that's what it is, what resolves them, and again, this is how you define that narcolepsy, which is sometimes treated by drugs, but it's incurable. You can cure sleep deprivation by providing an old cranky mare, because they're in charge. Doesn't matter if you're an alpha gelding. Old mares are in charge, and then when she's in charge, he can relax and finally and they only need like an hour or 2, maybe 3 hours of sleep a day, real sleep. That's my suggestion. I think she should talk it over to her vet. The thing I'm not supposed to forget is that there's a vet who studies this. He's been studying it for a long time, and he's where I get all my information from. Dr. Joe Bertone is at the Western University, one of the new vet schools. He said, I got an email from him today because I checked. He wants to hear about these cases. He wants people to contact him and tell him his stories. He may be doing a research project, I don't know. But he said it's fine to say his email address and put it on the screen.
Okay.
So it's Joe Bertone at westernu.edu.
We'll put it right on the screen.
We'll put it on the screen, because I may have messed that up. But yeah, it's an ongoing, something that's being studied. It's relatively newly recognized. We don't have all the facts. We're piecing it out more and more. She's clearly done her homework, because she knew it's not pain, it's not this, it might be that dominance factor. So, but talk to Dr. Bertone, and I think he might really be able to help you.
Based on how much research she's done, and then that she submitted the question here, I feel like you should be honored that you are who people turn to when Google fails them. This is very exciting.
Well.
This is a prestigious honor.
Okay.
So that's all the questions we have for this month. Thank you guys so much for submitting your questions. You can submit questions for our next episode on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, our blog, Twitter, or the form that you can find at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. You can also ask your questions anytime using hashtag AskTheVetVideos so that we can keep track of them wherever you're depositing them out in the social media world. And anything that's received before April 11th will be eligible for our May episode. You can keep an eye out for voting because that's the most important part. Asking a great question is part one, but then part two is making sure that your great question gets seen and voted to the top.
Right. That's the only way you get a gift card.
That's exactly right. There is a SmartPak gift card in it if you're one of the 5 questions selected. So you stay tuned for the voting. That's on YouTube, Twitter, or the blog. And if your question was answered in this or a previous video, be sure to email CustomerCare@smartpak.com or direct message us on YouTube, and we will get that gift card right out to you.
Right.
As always, subscribe so that you don't miss the next set of questions and answers and so that you don't miss the voting opportunity to make sure that you get your gift card. And as always, thank you guys for asking the vet, and have a great ride.